त्या खाणीतनं मला संपर्क करता आला असं एक बहुमोल रत्न म्हणजे ऍडव्होकेट अनिल धवस साहेब आज या ठिकाणी हजर आहेत. साहेब ज्युडिशियल सर्व्हिस मध्ये असताना पण त्या ठिकाणी व्याख्याते म्हणून यायचे प्रॉसिक्युटर्सच्या ट्रेनिंग मध्ये, आणि त्यानंतर पण वकिली सुरू केली साहेबांनी, आणि तेव्हा पण सर आपल्याला त्या ठिकाणी मार्गदर्शन करतायत. धवस सर ज्या रीतीने एव्हिडन्स ऍक्ट विषयी बोलतात त्या रीतीने बघताना मी कोणालाही बघितलं नाही, ऐकलं नाही, बोललं नाहीये. आपण जर डेटा बघितला तर आपल्याला चकित होतो आपण की या कॅलिबरचा एक माणूस एवढा निराभिमानी, एवढा सरळ मार्गी, एवढा खुशखुशाल कसा काय असू शकतो. नाही तर जेवढ्या डिग्र्या वाटतात ना तेवढं चेहऱ्यावरचं हसू गायब होत असतं लोकांचं. बोजा आ जाता है उनके सर पे. सरांच्या जर आपण डिग्रीज बघितल्या तर LLB, LLM आहे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अँड ऍडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव्ह लॉ मध्ये, NET इन लॉ, PG डिप्लोमा इन सायबर लॉ अँड IT, MBA ह्युमन रिसोर्सेस, MBL कॉर्पोरेट लॉ, MA पॉलिटिकल सायन्स पब्लिक ऍडमिनिस्ट्रेशन फिलॉसॉफी, B.Ed, PG डिप्लोमा इन इंटेलेक्चुअल अँड इंडस्ट्रियल प्रॉपर्टी लॉज, PG डिप्लोमा इन डिजिटल अँड सायबर फॉरेन्सिक. सरांनी 2003 साली चंद्रपूर या ठिकाणी विधी व्यवसाय सुरू केला आणि त्या दरम्यान त्यांनी सेशन कोर्टात, डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्टात, लेबर इंडस्ट्रियल कोर्टात काम केलं आणि MPSC परीक्षेमार्फत न्यायिक सेवेमध्ये 2016 साली साहेबांनी प्रवेश केला. 2006 साली प्रवेश केला आणि 2016 साली सरांचं तिथे सिव्हिल जज सिनियर डिव्हिजन म्हणून प्रमोशन झालं. सर्व्हिस जॉईन करण्याआधी सर लेक्चरर होते लॉ स्टुडंट साठी आणि MBA साठी. He was regular visiting faculty to the Judicial Officers Training Institute, Nagpur, for 4 years. He has voluntarily resigned from judicial service with effect from 31st July 2017 and has started practice in Nagpur bench of Bombay High Court. मला हे माहिती आहे वैयक्तिकरित्या की साहेबांकडे नागपूर सेशन कोर्टात पण बरंच काम होतं, पण साहेबांनी हायकोर्टातील कामाचा व्याप बघता साहेबांनी सेशन कोर्टातल्या ब्रीफ क्लायंट्सना परत केल्या. हे मी स्वतः वैयक्तिकरित्या जाणून आहे. एवढ्या कमी वेळात प्रॅक्टिस मध्ये एवढा जम बसणं, यावरून आपण निश्चित आपण हे खात्री करू शकतो की सरांकडे केवळ कायद्याचं पुस्तकी ज्ञान नाही तर एक प्रॅक्टिकल अप्रोच आहे. सरांचे वेगवेगळे निकाल मला नेहमी समजतात आणि त्यात त्यांचा न्यायाच्या बाजूने असलेला कल दिसतो. केवळ काहीतरी क्लायंट आहे म्हणून क्लायंटचं काम केलं अशा रीतीने नाही, तर उत्तमरित्या न्याय कसा होऊ शकतो आणि जलद गतीने न्याय कसा मिळू शकतो याचा प्रत्यय आपल्याला येतो. आपण बऱ्याच दिवसांपासून असा विचार करत होतो की आपण धवस साहेबांना आपण या आपल्या व्याख्यानमालेत निमंत्रित करावं आणि त्याचा लाभ सर्व प्रॉसिक्युटर्सना मिळावा. त्याच आठवड्यात हे आपण निश्चित केलं, सरांना फोन केला आणि सरांनी त्याच क्षणाला होकार दिला. मी आपल्या सर्वांच्या वतीने सरांचं स्वागत करतो आणि मी सरांना विनंती करतो की सर, आज आपला जो विषय आहे त्या विषयावर किंवा आपल्याला उचित वाटेल त्याही विषयावर अभियोक्त्यांचं मार्गदर्शन करावं. सर, पुनश्च आपलं मी स्वागत करतो. धन्यवाद सर. आपण आता मार्गदर्शनात सुरुवात करावी.
Good evening to all of you. Hope I am audible to all. So today's topic is how to prove the documents in criminal trial. And I think this is first time that I am delivering a lecture online. Though I am involved in arguing the cases before the High Court online. In entire this lockdown period, I have been arguing the cases online. But delivering a lecture, conducting meeting online, this is first time. And therefore there can be certain lacunae in technical connections. Just now I had a problem of connectivity, so I called up my technical fellow. Immediately he came, and therefore I had requested you to wait for 5 minutes. I'm very thankful to you that you have tolerated for certain time. At the same time, I am also receiving requests from the several APPs and other people to join them. But I told them that this is not in my hand, but it is in the hands of the learned PPs. So you better to request them to allow you to join the webinar. Be that as it may, that I expect that when you are listening me, there is one option of mute or unmute at the left hand of you. If you keep it mute, then it will the whatever you speak, you will not be heard by others. So it is a common experience even during the course of the arguments in the High Court also, that certain people, those who kept their microphone unmute, whatever they were saying were being heard by all other advocates. Anyway, so today's topic, and I think today vis-a-vis other connected questions which I have received from all of you, would take I think 2 lectures, because it will not be possible to cover up all these questions and the topics because of the certain time limits and the limits of the technology also. So I hope that I shall be conducting and covering of certain topics to many extent, but we will reserve certain aspects of the questions to be discussed in later phase of discussion. Hope in coming days or after few days, as you may deem fit. So when we talk about the Indian Evidence Act, and when we talk about the proof of the documents, in particularly in criminal trial, because as being a learned PPs, public prosecutor or assistant public prosecutor, the how to prove the documents in civil law is not the domain of us, because there are certain procedures which are differently followed in civil laws and the criminal laws, because the manner and the procedure somehow different to prove the documents in civil cases and the criminal cases. But we have to stick up ourselves to the proof of documents in only criminal cases, and therefore I restrict myself to discuss this topic with an intention to prove the document, because so many questions are coming up. More, it is also a matter of concern of all of you, how to prove the documents under section in respect of the cases 420, 468, 461, 471, because nowadays the magnitude of the frauds, say the banking frauds, thousands documents are being filed, and the matters are not touched only for the reason we hesitate how to prove it, whom to be called as a witness, whom should not be called, whether the court will take it up, whether the court has time or not. These are the questions, and therefore as a result of which these financial fraud cases, wherein the record is bulky, they are kept as it is lying in the court premises only. The trial is withheld. As it is also experience of all of us that in so far as electronic record is concerned, that we have conducted several lectures on this electronic record, how to prove the CCTV camera, how to prove the electronic record, and thereafter we have seen the result also, that the cases which were not touched by the learned APPs, we started to put it forward. We started to move forward. Evidences were started to be recorded. Why? Because their concept, their notion how to prove the electronic record was simplified. During the course of our lectures, during the course of our discussions, we have clarified it. We had taken several examples how to prove the electronic record, as a result of which we have seen so many cases are moving forward in so far as electronic record is concerned. But still the problem is there in respect of the documents of fraud, and therefore one has to understand that it is not so difficult as we think, that the proving of document, people think that the proving of document is a difficult task, but once you get an idea how to prove it in the manner provided under the Indian Evidence Act, perhaps you'll find it very easy to prove the documents. See, the provisions, I shall take you through certain provisions of the Indian Evidence Act. As everybody knows, that just briefly introducing this Indian Evidence Act, as you know that it was drafted by Sir James, and it came into force on 1st of September 1872. This is the act on which the Indian Contract Act also came in force, and this act is not applicable to is not applicable to the trial conducted under the Army Act, Navy Act, and the Air Force Act, convened, which we call it a court-martial proceedings. Otherwise, in our India, all the criminal trials, excluding these trials of court-martial, the trials are conducted in the manner provided under the Indian Evidence Act. So this is a general law to be applied to all criminal trials in India, except the trials convened under the Army Act, Navy Act, and the Air Force Act. This act is also not applicable to the affidavits filed in the court. Though some way we call it evidence, but in technically speaking, that this act is not applicable to the affidavits. So these are certain exclusion clauses. Now it is applicable to all over India. Earlier there was a restriction not to be applied in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, but once the Reorganization Act has been passed by the Parliament, now it is applicable to all over India. So that bar is also not there. Now coming to the topic of discussion, that how to prove the documents. So when we see what is the document, the idea, the conventional idea of document comes in the mind only the papers and the papers and the papers. But if you see minutely the definition of the document, we will notice that it is not simple paper, but so many things would come under the definition of the document. The document means anything written, expressed, or described on any substance. Anything, I am repeating, anything written, described, or expressed in any substance by means of letter, words, figures, etc., so as to have record of it. So anything, once we say anything, it could be a paper, it could be a stone, it could be a wall, it could be a fan, it could be a cell phone, it could be a mobile, and whatever is written thereon, once it is written so as to have record of it, then it becomes a document. There are certain illustrations provided under the definition of this document, that the caricature is a document. Inscription on a metal plate is a document. Inscription on a metal plate is a document. So whatever is written on the stone is also a document. See, I used to give example that one farmer who had been to his field, and he was succumbed to death because of snake biting. All of a sudden he thinks that I should give my property to my elder son, not the younger son. So he writes it down on the earth, something on the land, by his finger, that my property shall go to the hands of my particular son. That is, we call it a will. Whether whatever he has written is a document or not. So we have to see the definition of this document, which provides anything written, because he has written on any substance, though it is a piece of land, so it is a document, because he has made a record of it. It conveys the certain meaning of it, and therefore it is a document. Another example which is common in Hindi movies, that the father or any relative of a particular hero, he dies, he is killed or he is murdered by some villain. So a good thing he does, that he writes the name of the culprit, the murderer, by the blood stain, by using his blood on a particular wall, and he simply writes the name of that villain, Shakal, or PK. So then the movie hero, he comes, he sees that his relative father is died on the spot, but the wall which is beside the dead body shows the name of Shakal or PK, as the case may be. So question is whether whatever is written by his blood on the wall is a document or not. If we see the definition, that whatever is written on any substance, by means of letter, figure, or anything is called a document, and therefore these these are the documents. Even my number plate, name plate, which is reflected, anything is engrossed upon a metal plate. For instance, the vehicle registration number, that is also a document within the meaning of the Indian Evidence Act. So the conventional idea that only the papers are the document is not intended by the by the draftman insofar as this Indian Evidence Act is concerned. Now coming to the question how to prove it, because there can be certain manner, the procedures are the manner of proving the documents insofar as civil cases are concerned, and the manner of proving the documents insofar as criminal cases are concerned is altogether different. See, there are two manuals in the court. One is the civil manual and other one is the criminal manual. The criminal manuals, they are not statutory, but they are the administrative guidelines and instructions issued by the High Court under the constitutional powers, and therefore those guidelines are to be followed by the courts in Maharashtra. So certain guidelines are there which you will not find in the act. For instance, if a civil document is to be proved, there is a particular procedure. For instance, if plaintiff wants to adduce evidence to prove his ownership on the basis of a sale deed, so surely, in order to prove his sale deed, he will call an attesting witness to prove the contents of the sale deed. But calling an attesting witness will not always be mandatory, but it will be depend upon the defense which the defendant has taken and the facts of that particular case. But just to illustrate my point, that I am giving an example that the plaintiff has called an attesting witness on the sale deed, who shall be coming in the court will be giving in on oath that I know this seller, the vendor and the vendee. I had been to the office of sub registrar, and on that particular day, sale deed was executed. So he is witnessing, he is a witness to that document, and he will be proving it. So, and therefore that document is marked as exhibit so and so. That's it. But the manual provides, the civil manual provides, it is mandatory to record on the document, at the top of the document, as to who has proved it. In Maharashtra, see, in several districts this practice is followed, but in Vidarbha region, in so many districts this practice is not followed, that it is mandatory to record at the top at the top of the document to mention as to who the exhibit number, the case number, and by whom it is proved, and thereafter the judge has to sign that it is proved. So three things very mandatory necessary: exhibit number, secondly the case number, thirdly the witness number PW123 as the case may be, and the signature of the judge. And this procedure is hardly followed in so many cases. But when inspection team comes, then they pointed out that there are certain flaws in giving exhibit marks. Thereafter the compliances are made by the staff of the court. In the criminal manual also, the same procedure is provided, that whenever a document is to be proved, then it is necessary to mention the document, the exhibit number, the case number, by whom it is proved, and the signature of the judge. Because there can be certain occasions, because I have come across a judgment of the Honorable Bombay High Court wherein it is provided, it is observed that when this procedure which is provided under the manual, then it cannot be said that the document is properly proved and exhibited as provided under the manual. This is the judgment on the topic of the proving of the civil documents, not on the criminal documents. But though it is an administrative task, but it is necessary to mark, to record these things, to mention the exhibit numbers, to give the number of the witness, etc. The important thing that both manuals equally provided the manner of giving exhibit marks to the document. Now, going further, what shall be the proof to prove the document will depend upon particular facts. Now, if whether an attesting witness will be necessary or not to be examined will be the facts depend on the facts of the cases. The cases are the Panchanama, Memorandum, Panchanama, Search Panchanama, then Arrest Panchanama, then the statements of the witnesses, then comes the sketch maps, then comes sanction orders, then comes the notifications issued under the Maharashtra Police Act, under the Arms Act, under the control order, seed control order, fertilizer control orders, those orders issued under the Essential Commodities Act. Unfortunately, what happens that only a photocopy is placed on record mentioning that this person accused has violated this particular control order, and then everything is rest on the shoulder of this learned PP. He comes in the problem to prove it. He does not have the original, and hardly I have seen the copies of the control orders are placed on record, or the copies of the notification issued under the Maharashtra Police Act, Section 37, which is mandatory to prove that there was the order issued by the district magistrate which was duly promulgated. Simply an order is annexed with the charge sheet without mentioning anything whether the order was duly promulgated or not. If there are certain judgments on this point, whether if a document, if an order issued by the authority is not duly promulgated in the manner provided under the law, then the person cannot be booked, cannot be prosecuted for the said offense. Therefore, promulgation of order and the proof of promulgation is also equally important to be proved before the court. Now, when we start and when we speak about the FIR, because we are mainly concerned with the FIR and the documents which we use in the criminal law. FIR, first information. Even the question comes, what is the FIR? Which is the FIR? We can have a separate discussion on this topic. What is the FIR? Because somebody makes a call to the police giving an information about a crime, that particular crime is going on at this particular place. Whether this information given on telephone is called an FIR. Second question is whether the police officer who reduces into writing whatever the contents a narrator gives, the informant gives, is the FIR, because we commonly use two words. One is the FIR is exhibit 10 and the printed FIR is exhibit 11. So there are two FIRs in our cases mostly, but there can be only one and one FIR, because the name itself suggests first means first. There cannot be second FIR. If it is second, then it is not a FIR. It can be something different. It can be a statement. It can be anything, but it can never be said to be an FIR, because FIR always comes first, as the name indicates. That is different area of discussion. What is the FIR and what is not the FIR? Then how to prove it? There are several, because the Indian Evidence Act provides when a document is to be proved. When a document is to be proved, the document has to be proved by placing it on record, the document itself. If a fact can be proved only by the document, then the document itself has to be adduced on record. For instance, if the plaintiff claims that I have become the owner of the property by virtue of a sale deed dated so and so, he is bound to place on record his sale deed. But he has failed to produce on record the sale deed, but he has examined 100 witnesses to prove his ownership, oral evidence. He has tendered 100 people as witnesses to prove his ownership. The question is whether he is able to prove his ownership in the eyes of law, though he has examined 100 witnesses. On the other hand, the plaintiff examined himself and only one witness, attesting witness on the sale deed, and places on record the sale deed. Only one document, only one witness, that is sufficient to prove his ownership, depend upon the facts of the case. Kindly see, there are 100 witnesses at one hand, and on other hand, the quality of the witnesses is required. What it was, section 134 provides, no particular number of witnesses required to prove a particular fact. So, but what we see that this witness is necessary, and we go on calling several witnesses which may be relevant, which may not be relevant. But what is relevant is to whether this witness is necessary to be examined or not. Ultimately, you are you represent prosecution machinery, though you are not. You are not supposed to be puppet at the hands of the police machinery or the state government. You are independent person. You have to apply your mind independently. Nobody can withdraw the prosecution. There is a provision of withdrawing the prosecution. And who can withdraw the prosecution? It is no other person. Even the district magistrate does not have power. National commission has no power. The state government has no power. It is you only to apply for withdrawal of the prosecution. Then, but while withdrawing the prosecution, it is for you to apply your mind, apply your discretion, whether it is fitness of the things to withdraw it or not. As you know, I have shared the judgment. In the case of Veerappan, Abdul Hamid case, Veerappan had kidnapped Dr. Rajkumar, and on the gunpoint he sought the withdrawal of several cases under the TADA, as it was applicable at the relevant time and unlawful for the court to release them on bail. As a result of which, the state government convened a meeting. The scenario, if you remember, in those days we had witnessed it on television that very famous that South India, Dr. Rajkumar was abducted by Veerappan, and on the gunpoint the state government was ready to withdraw the prosecution. The PP, the public prosecutor, was instructed to withdraw the prosecution. Ultimately, he moved an application to withdraw the cases, to withdraw certain sections from the cases, and we learned that special court, TADA court, allowed those applications, and thereby he allowed to withdraw the cases, serious sections which were invoked against the associates of that Veerappan. You know that the one police officer who was killed by Veerappan, his father had challenged this order before the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court, challenging that what is going on. We live in the state rule of law. We are a constitutionally governed country, and on the gunpoint, how the state government can take such a decision, which is not known to the law tomorrow, and therefore his arguments was that there is no application of mine. See what has happened. The PP was instructed by the law minister. There he had discussion with the law minister, and law minister told him to withdraw. Accordingly, withdraw all the cases. But the Honorable Supreme Court considered all the aspects, the rule of law, the constitutional setup of our country, and the cases, the nature of the cases, seriousness, immediately stayed the order and directed that this cannot be done, because though state government had directed the PP to withdraw the cases, but it was the domain of the prosecutor to apply his mind. In this case, the learned PP had not applied his mind. Special prosecutor had not applied his mind, because he acted simply on the instructions of the law minister of the state, home minister of the state, and therefore the Honorable Supreme Court holds that if a prosecution is to be withdrawn, then it is for you people, the prosecutor, to apply your mind independently to arrive at a conclusion whether this is appropriate or not to withdraw the case from the prosecution. This is what the deviation, but I thought it is necessary to discuss, and therefore I am sharing with this you. And another point which I wanted to discuss with you throughout, because as you are hearing from Pan Maharashtra, there is a practice of we give no objection for compounding cases. There are two offenses. One is compoundable, other one is non-compoundable. Still, we give no objection because it is compoundable. One, we allow compoundable, and for non-compoundable, everybody knows what happens. That the evidence of the victim is recorded. He says or she says, nothing has happened, nothing has happened. And the learned court eventually releases the accused. Partial compounding of offense, is it permissible under law? Because offense is offense. There cannot be segregation of section, this section, that section, and therefore there is a judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court that partial compounding is not permissible under law, and therefore one has to be cautious while entertaining or while dealing with such cases of compounding, while dealing with the cases of withdrawal of prosecution. Now, friends, I am again coming to the topic of the FIR, first information report. Remember, every document has to be proved by the author of the document. Basic rule. Every rule has exception, but the rule is the author of the document. Who is the author of the document? In a criminal case, one victim, the informant, a person who approaches to the police station, who narrates the incident, who gives the information to the police, he is technically called as the informant. He is not the complainant. In fact, we use the word complainant. But if you see technically, since we are in the law field, we are not supposed to use the word as the layman, but we have to stick up with the words which are provided under the law. He is the informant. A person who lodges the FIR, he is the informant, and the person who makes the allegation in writing before the magistrate is the complainant. So whether this person has approached to the magistrate with the allegations in writing, no, he has approached to the police station for lodging the first information report, for giving the first information of cognizable offense, and therefore he is called the informant. And therefore, basic rule is, if an FIR is to be proved, first and the foremost rule is to examine that informant. Many times it may happen that the informant is not available, or is not traceable, or is dead. There are other means and modes to prove it, but the basic rule is the informant. If the informant is not available, then you need to explain the circumstances why it is not possible to examine the informant. If he is not available for XYZ reason, those reasons are to be shown. Then the person, there are the person, the officer on duty who reduces into writing the FIR, or the person who knows the handwriting of the informant. There are other ways, but basic rule is to call the informant. Then we prove it. We call it the FIR. The first we give exhibit number to the FIR, and then to the printed FIR. Now, question is again, who is the author of this printed FIR? But insofar as our state is concerned, that there is a column of signature of the informant, and so technically speaking, that this FIR is also authored by, to an extent, by the informant, although there is a signature of the officer on duty, because it is nothing but the extract of the report lodged by the informant, and therefore the person who lodges the FIR has to be examined. This is the first rule to prove the FIR. Everybody knows. If he is not available, then other rule. If he is not able to understand Marathi, different rules. Many a times he does not make signature. Then how would we know that? Still we ask him whether the contents of it are true and correct. In order to make him understand the contents of the FIR, it is necessary to explain as to what is written there. Thereafter only he can, because there are rustic witnesses. A person who does not know writing, still we show him a paper and ask him whether what is written here is correct. He always says correct. That is okay. But technically speaking, if in the cross examination, if it is asked that do you know reading, no, he does not know reading, and still how did you know that the contents of it are true and correct unless they are explained to him? So while while proving the FIR, it is also necessary to explain him, to put to extract from his mouth the contents of the FIR, to ascertain the veracity of the witness also. Then there are several other rules. The Panchanama. Even the Indian Evidence Act does not use the word Panchanama. The Code of Criminal Procedure also does not use the word Panchanama. But surely, this is the combination of the CRPC and the Indian Evidence Act that we come across this Panchanama, which in English we call it as a memorandum. The word memorandum is used in the statute, not the Panchanama, but commonly the word itself indicates Panchanama. Pancha means in Marathi that is some different man, independent person, respectable person, association of person is called a Pancha Nama. So what happens in his presence? Declaration, something is written, Nama. So whatever is written in the presence of some independent person, Pancha, respectable persons, that is called Pancha Nama. So what is the provision in the CRPC? The same. In order to make a search of any premises, it is necessary to call two independent witnesses to make search in their presence. Not only independent but respectable persons in the locality. How do we ascertain the respectability of the person? We don't know. Yeah, but I believe that everybody has respect, as the Constitution has guaranteed the respect. So anybody who is the citizen of India is respectable, but two persons are to be examined, respectable persons. So they are to be examined. Why? The word itself indicates that Panchanama. So Pancha, in whose presence that Nama is prepared, that draft is prepared, that map is prepared, they are to be examined by the prosecution. What if they are not examined? No issue. They can be, the Panchanama can be proved by the investigation officer, by the police officer, by the person who draws it, provided that you should explain the circumstances, the reasons as to why those people who were shown as the witnesses are not able to come to the court. Directly examining the investigation officer without making any effort to examine the witnesses, you are directly calling the investigation officer or the police or machinery, police officer. So you may give the exhibit marks to the document, but the question of trustworthiness, the veracity of the document will be in question. But if you could prove it that there were two witnesses, out of whom one is dead and other one is not traceable, because those reports surely will be on the record of the court, to establish that the particular person is no more available and the other person who was witness is also not traceable, then there is no other option but to prove it, but to believe the evidence of the investigation officer or the police officer, because there is no rule of law. There is no rule of law that the police officer cannot be believed. There is no. This is not in all the cases that police are interested witnesses. This is not universal rule, but it will depend upon the facts of the case, the conduct of the police officer, his interest, if any, in a particular case, will decide the fate of the case and his evidence to be accepted or not to be accepted. So, second point which I am elaborating after the FIR, the Panchanamas are to be basically proved by examining those witnesses. Now, I am repeatedly using the word proved. What is the meaning of the proof? Does it mean that we have to prove it scientifically, technically, 100%? See, there cannot be 100% science. Even in the field of the science, even the medical experts, they say that chewing of tobacco will result into cancer. Whether all the people who consumes tobacco, they suffer from the cancer? Not 100% rule, but it is a rule. Their science says so. Likewise, the Indian Evidence Act, as I always said, it is scientifically drafted, and even on today's science, on the touchstone of the scientific principles, it proves its ability even on today. Therefore, the definition of proof is so scientifically drafted that it provides that when the court considers, when the court, after examining everything, every fact, considers that a particular fact is proved, or considers its existence so probable, the word probable is used, so probable that a prudent man under the circumstances believes its existence is so probable, law of probability. Probability is also, there are two things in the definition of the proof. One is direct evidence. For instance, there are two friends, they are seen by one person entering into a room. After 10 minutes, one of them, he comes out with a knife, and other one is inside the room and is dead. The person who had seen these two people, only one fact, that he had seen these two friends entering into a room, and he has seen another fact that one person has come out from the room whereas other did not come. He has not seen that the person who came out had committed the murder of the person who was inside. But there was no other way either to come inside the room or to go out from the room. Only one way, from which this person was witnessing their entry and exit. What is so probable? Then second part of the definition comes into picture. After considering the matter in totality, the fact that this person accused has committed the murder is so probable, there is no other option. The chain of event is so strong that there is no other option, there is no other conclusion, though nobody has seen him while committing the murder. But what is so probable? The person who has come out from the room has committed the murder of that person. There can be several instances, that is, we call it a circumstantial evidence, but it is provided under the definition of the proof. And the first part of the definition talks about the direct evidence, meaning thereby, if an incident of murder takes place in a square which is witnessed by 10 people, and out of these 10 people, the witnesses, they are coming in the court, depositing before the court that, sir, I have seen this accused person while committing the murder. Another witness comes in the court, he also says, sir, I have seen this person while committing the murder. In this way, 10 people, they came, they deposed, and they have witnessed, they deposed what they witnessed. Now judge has no other option, because he should have reason to disbelieve these 10 respected people who had witnessed the incident. So what is then first, after considering the matter means after considering the case of the prosecution, after considering the defense of the defense of the accused, the court comes to the conclusion that this is only possible, that this person has committed the murder unless and until there is other more probable defense saying that no, he did not die because of the beating of this accused person, but he died in other way. He died because of some other reason. Unless this comes on the record, there is no other option to the judge to conclude that this accused has committed the murder. So it is not always necessary to have eyewitnesses, because the definition of the proof provides, one is the positive assertions that there should be witnesses, there should be proof, and the second assertion is that even if there is no direct witnesses, but certain facts are proved which are leading to the conclusion that this is the only probable, which I have illustrated from that earlier illustration of two friends. So probable. Not proved, when the judge comes to the conclusion that it is not proved, there is no direct evidence, nor it is probable also. For instance, A is accused of an offense of murder in a square in Nagpur city. But he comes with the defense, sir, no, I have not committed the murder, because on this 27th June of 2020, I was in the US, and I was held up there because of the coronavirus pandemic. I could not return to India and see the documents that I had been to US in the month of March, first week, and see, I returned to India on 30th of June 2020. So how it is possible to commit the murder on this 27th of June 2020? He has established it. So what has happened? The accused has explained with more and more probability that it is not possible. It is so improbable that the person who was in the US would come and would murder and would return to US in this short time, that too when the international flights are not available to either to come or to go out of India. So improbable. Then therefore we can say that it is not proved. It is the prosecution is failed to prove it. Proved, earlier definition is proved, thereafter not proved. And there are the other and third clause provides disproved. When disproved means the probability that this fact does not exist. The words are used when the judge believes that this fact does not exist or its existence so probable. And not proved, disproved, not proved, neither proved nor disproved, neither here nor there. Most of the cases, the accused, they get benefit not of disproving your case, but cases are not proved. Hardly in cases the defense disproves your case. Cases are not false, but for certain XYZ reasons, the cases are not proved. And this definition, the definition of proved, disproved, not proved, those definitions, they hinge upon the very word fact. What is to be proved? The fact. Mainly speaking, this Indian Evidence Act consists of three questions: what, why, and how. What, why, and how. What is to be proved? Why to be proved, and how it is to be proved. What is to be proved is the fact is to be proved. Whatever may be the allegation, A is an accused of committing the murder of B. The fact that A has committed the murder of B is required to be proved. Why? To prove the prosecution's case, because he has committed the offense and therefore he is guilty of particular section and therefore it is to be proved. How? In the manner provided under the law. In the manner basically provided under the Indian Evidence Act, but there are certain special laws which gives laws which give presumptions that you are guilty. But still, in order to invoke those presumptions also, certain facts are required to be proved. If you see the definition of fact, what is fact? Anything, state of thing, relation of thing, capable of being pursued by senses. Anything. Once I use the word anything, this mobile phone which you are watching, you are listening me, that then there are several things happening behind the curtain. State of thing that your cell phone is on, laptop is on, state of thing that on, relation of thing that I am speaking from here, Nagpur, and you are hearing me across the Maharashtra. You are hearing me from Mumbai and other places of Maharashtra. Anything, state of thing, relation of the, see, relation that you have sent me a link, I have connected it, I have sent one link, or you have sent links to others, they have connected it. Relation of thing, connectivity. when you switch on or off light, switching and light, giving light, connectivity between these two. Anything, state of thing, relation of thing capable of being perceived by senses. Capable of being perceived by senses. The word capable, I am giving emphasis. Perceived by senses, the senses which we have. If we see the things which are not capable by perceiving by capable of being pursued by senses is not a fact. The word capable. Why the capable? See, there exists a coronavirus. Have you seen it? Have you witnessed it? No. But is it or not? It is. It is there. Why? How we have come to know that there is a coronavirus? How the people, how these medical experts come to know that a particular person is suffering from coronavirus? The doctor, their sense of perceiving fact, they enhance by applying certain tools, by applying certain machinery, certain mechanism. Human capability is enhanced to recognize certain things, and thereby we come to know, we perceive certain things by way of senses. Otherwise, see, air. Can we see the air? No, but there are other sense which recognizes that there is air. We are living, that is the proof of air, because we are inhaling, exhaling. We are alive. There is a sun, we can see it, we can perceive it by means of senses. But can we see stars now when there is a sunlight? No. Does it mean that there are no stars? We can see, provided that we apply necessary mechanism. So it does not mean that whatever cannot be seen is not a fact, and whatever we see, that is only fact. There are so many things which we cannot see, but in order to know those facts, certain necessary equipments are to be used, meaning thereby that we enhance our capability. We enhance our capability to recognize the things, to recognize the fact, and then we come to know that that particular swab is taken by the doctor. Then a technical expert, that medical expert, they use certain machinery, certain test, and thereby they come to know that person is suffering from coronavirus or not. Yeah. Nobody had seen the coronavirus. The only person who could see it, the technical expert, by applying necessary kits of testing this coronavirus. So human sense of recognizing facts, recognizing things is increased, is enhanced, and therefore we come to know that a particular fact is there, fact of infection of corona. So anything, this word, sun, star, moon, state of thing, relation of thing, capable of being pursued by relation, capable of being pursued by senses. See the relation. You are listening me. I am talking from here because the data is transferred in patches, and which gives you clear audio, clear video because of the data. How one can ascertain, technical person can easily understand, can ascertain that internet is going on, internet is on, and therefore data is being transferred from one place to other, and that is why we are connected. So that is called the relation of things. If you switch off your data, you will not be able to hear me or to see each other, because relation of things. Once you click on, you can watch me, you can hear me, but once you click it off, you cannot see me, you cannot hear me. Relation of things. And the second aspect, a person is conscious. A person who is conscious of certain fact means consciousness. Even those cannot be seen by any machinery. Cannot be seen by any machinery. Cannot be tested by any scientific tools. But still, those facts are there. For instance, a person has reputation in the eyes of society. Reputation can never be measured by any machinery. Still is a fact. that I always give this example that a particular Mahatma Gandhi ji is respected in India throughout the world is the fact. Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar is respected throughout the world is a fact. How can we measure the manner or the extent of respect? There is no mechanism. But therefore, those things, ill will, intention, motive, can never be seen, can never be tested, can never be measured by scientific tools. And therefore, it is also a fact. A person is conscious of something is also a fact. Therefore, the fact is anything, state of thing, relation of thing, but those relations, those things must be capable of being pursued by senses, human senses. For other example, that A is accused of committing the murder of B. A knife which is used is seized, and the blood stain, the knife is blood stained, and therefore blood sample is taken to ascertain that it is a blood, not only a blood, but it is human blood. We open, we can see that it is blood because of our little bit intellectual level of human understanding that something is red, we can assume that it is a blood. But whether it is human blood or animal blood, not possible to recognize by human being unless and until we test it in a laboratory, unless we seek the expert opinion, unless a scientific process is undertaken. This undertaking of scientific process is nothing but enhancing the human capability. That expert, he uses the machinery to recognize certain thing, and thereby he comes to know, no, this blood is not of human, but is of animal. So this is a fact. So whatever we see, whatever we can hear, whatever we pursue by senses is a fact. And even if we do not pursue by senses, but they can be pursued by senses, provided that certain mechanism is adopted, certain procedure is followed, then we can perceive it by senses. That is also a fact. And the person who is having something in mind is also a fact, is also recognized by the Indian Evidence Act. And therefore, this fact, anything means the commission of murder, the commission of theft, the commission abduction, kidnapping, these are the facts. And therefore, I had used the word that everything of the Indian Evidence Act, the criminal trial, the cases hinges upon the particular word, the fact, and the fact which is to be proved. The fact which is alleged by one party, by the prosecution, they are to be proved. How to prove? Again, that is the matter of discussion. But proof is when the judge thinks, prudent man thinks that this is only probable, or this is the probable after taking into consideration the material on record, the evidences available on record, judge comes to the conclusion. The word prudency is used and related to the judge who decides the matter. Judge is expected to be a reasonable, a prudent man, not so extraordinary, not so logical, not so illogical, but prudency. What is the definition of prudency? Not provided. Prudency is to be determined by applying certain manners of behavior, certain manners of understanding human intelligence, etc. But prudency means normally that what a person, common man, does in certain circumstances, most of the people they do is called a prudency. When you are driving a vehicle and you have to take a right turn, every prudent man who wants to take a right turn will either ensure that nobody is coming from backside, reverse side, or he will give indicator to the right side, or will give some kind of sign at the right side so as to turn to the right side. This is called the prudency. The person, imprudent person, will not think anything. He will not think. He will immediately take right turn, as a result of which there will be accident. So he is totally negligent. He is not prudent person. So the definition of prudency means that ordinary person who doing a thing which ordinary prudent man do and not doing a thing which prudent man would not do. That is called the negligence. But prudency is something which most of the people will do. Therefore, the prudent man in the discussion is the learned judge who decides the matter. Now, again, the cases which we come across, I have spoken about the FIR, the Panchanamas, which is called memorandum. I was talking about the spot Panchanama, not spot Panchanama. Now I am coming to the spot Panchanama. What is it and where is the provision? See, the word memorandum is used and they are relevant to prove a particular fact. By whom to be proved? As I told you, by the witnesses. Spot Panchanama, then seizure Panchanama, then search Panchanama. These are to be proved by the person in whose presence the Panchanamas were prepared, or those who are cited as witnesses. Here, I had earlier told you by whom the document is to be proved, the author of the document. Now, here is an exception that the author of Panchanama is someone different, whereas the proof, the person who are to prove the Panchanama, they are different. They are the Panch witnesses, whereas the police officer is the author of the document. The police officer, he prepares the Panchanama. The witnesses simply they saw it while preparing it. The police officer explains, at least he is expected to explain the whatever is written in the Panchanama, and thereafter they are supposed to sign as a witnesses. If they are available, they are to be examined. If they are not available, the investigation officer will ensure to prove it in the manner provided under the law. In the trials which we are coming across, 420 cases, bank fraud cases, and the question which I had received most of the questions, how to prove bogus documents, how to prove the fraudulent transactions, because the Evidence Act talks about proving of the documents, not proving of the bogus documents. Remember, there can be a provision as to how to prove will, how to prove sale deed, how to prove a document. Once we use this document, which I have taken through you, the definition is supposed to be a legal document, valid document. There can never be a provision how to prove bogus document or fraud document, and therefore you will not find anywhere in the statute the provision how to prove the bogus document. For instance, a particular sale deed is or any document is prepared which is a bogus document, on the basis of which certain loans are taken by that fellow. Later on it is revealed that the person who had taken the loan had prepared this false, bogus and fabricated document. That's alleged, or the fabricated document is kept on record of the court, which is to be proved. And your question is how to prove such transactions, how to prove such document that it is bogus. Remember, how to prove the document. What would have happened if there was a question to prove a document? We would have surely examined one person as a witness, attesting witness, either vendor or vendee, seller or purchaser, or attesting witnesses. If they are not available, then the staff from the sub-register office, secondary evidence, certified copies, etc. Those are the same principles which are to be applied to prove that this document is a bogus document, meaning thereby the person who is cited as a witness, as an attesting witness, a person who is shown as a seller or a purchaser, the person who is shown to be a registrar of the office of registrar or staff of the registrar's office, they can be examined as a witness. The attesting witness would come in the court, or the seller or the purchaser would come in the court. He will depose sir, my name is shown, signature is shown, but I never had been to the office of sub registrar. This is not my signature. I have not executed this document. That's it. The attesting witnesses would come in the court. They would depose, sir, I have never been to the office of sub registrar, though my name is reflecting here there. Though sometimes photographs are also used by these people, because it is common thing to get the photocopies, photographs and the documents prepared, because of we are in the world of this technology. Immediately signatures can be manipulated, can be forged. So the attesting witnesses will come. They will say, sir, I have never been to the office of sub registrar. I have not executed this document. That's it. That meaning what? Is it necessary to say that this witness that, sir, this is bogus, fabricated or fraudulent document? How would he know that this is bogus? He will know only that I have not signed it. I have never been to the office of sub registrar, and this is not the document I have ever executed. So what is probable? What is so probable? That when the door is open, it means what? Door is not closed. When there is a night, it means what? There is no day. When it is proved by the witnesses that this document was not executed, it means what? It is fraudulent document. It is bogus document. In the same way, the technical rules of the Indian Evidence Act provide that if a document is to be proved, then the document itself. When document is to be proved, remember, I'm giving emphasis. If a document is to be proved, if a sale deed is to be proved, then the original sale deed has to be placed on record, because the contents of it are required to be proved in the manner provided under the Indian Evidence Act. The Indian Evidence Act does not say how to prove the bogus transaction, bogus document, and therefore original must be there. Attesting witnesses must be there. That rule will not be applicable to the forged and bogus documents, because Indian Evidence Act provides to prove certain documents. It does not provide to prove the manner of proving the documents which are forged in nature. Bank transactions has certain presumptions also. Financial frauds. I am requested by some of you to speak in Marathi also. For some reason, some participants are requesting me from this chat column. Anyway, if a particular statement of account is to be proved, a copy of statement is placed on record, and there are two questions in our mind: that this document is electronically generated. Is there a requirement to have a certificate under Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act? Because our concept is that there has to be certificate as contemplated under Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act, if it is to be proved, because it is not the original. When the extract is taken, it means what? The original is with the bank. Rule number 1, insofar as this electronic record is concerned, when the original itself is placed on record, there is complete dispensation of filing certificate as contemplated under Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act. If an incident is recorded in a hard disk, that hard disk itself is produced for the inspection of the court, no requirement of Section 65B. There can be certain cases which we come across in the court of the learned magistrates, that is obscene data, obscene CDs, and the questions crop up in our mind how to prove that they are original. Those CDs are not coupled with the certificate as contemplated under Section 65B. Then how can we prove it? Remember, why for we are proving that document, that is also important. See, there is no straight jacket formula to prove or to disprove a certain facts. Everything will depend upon the facts of the case. If it is a case that the person accused was possessing obscene CD, what is necessary to prove? That he was possessing those CDs, whether it is genuine or not. Is this the job of the prosecutor to prove it? The job of the prosecutor, the job of the prosecution to prove its possession. What is unlawful is the possession of unlawful documents or obscene materials. So some people say, no, how can one guarantees the authenticity of the CDs? There is no requirement to have authenticity of CD in such cases. But in other way, if it is proved that if it is a case of murder which was recorded in CCTV, and the video of that CCTV is to be taken in a CD to be produced in the court of law with the charge sheet, of course, then there is a requirement of proving it, because one has to give authenticity, one has to take responsibility to prove this fact, and therefore in this example there will be necessity to have the proof, to have the authenticity to support the contents of the electronic record. Now I am giving you certain examples that FIR is to be proved by the author, by the person who had signed the FIR, who had given the information. And if an inquiry is conducted in which it is found that this is totally false FIR, then there are provisions in the Indian Penal Code coupled with the provisions of the Code of Criminal Procedure which provide to take action against the person who gives false information to the police. Ultimately, police will take the action against the person who had lodged the FIR. But now take an example that you are going to court, and while going to the court, you have witnessed an incident of outraging the modesty of a girl. And being a lawman, you have recorded it immediately in your cell phone, and you have taken it to or you have informed this fact to the police. Say you have lodged the FIR in the police station, coupled with the electronic record. I'm sure that you will not hand over the original cell phone of you, because you have purchased it by your hard work, hard-earned money. Why would you give the original memory, either memory card or the cell phone, to the police? But you can, at your best, you can copy that video into a CD or in a pen drive, and you can hand it over. Now see, the original is here in the memory card of the cell phone, whereas copy is either in the cell phone, either in the CD or in the pen drive, which you have handed it over to the police. There is no signature, there is no procedure of making signature on CD or pen drive as we sign it on the papers. And therefore, if tomorrow investigation is completed and it is found that the CD was absolutely unauthenticated, no such incident ever occurred or happened as shown in the video, who can be held responsible? Can you be held responsible? And if so, because have you taken the responsibility of authenticity of that CD? No. But while handing over the CD or the pen drive, if you give something in writing to the police that today while coming from my house to the court, I have witnessed this incident which I have recorded in my cell phone of particular brand, and I usually record it. I use the cell phone. I am having lawful control, lawful authority over the cell phone. And this cell phone, the incident of this particular date is recorded in this cell phone, which I have copied it in this CD or pen drive, which is handed over to you. And the contents which I have recorded are the same contents which are in the CD or the pen drive. And whatever I say, whatever the contents are there are true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief, hence this certificate or hence this letter. Now, tomorrow if it is found that you had provided a false or bogus CD, doctor CD, manufacturer CD, you can be held responsible because you had assured the police the authenticity. You had guaranteed the police the authenticity of the CD. Therefore, you can be prosecuted. Now, see, why for this certificate is necessary? Insofar as this electronic record is concerned, remember very important thing that this electronic record is also a document within the meaning of the Indian Evidence Act. You will find 3 places in the Indian Evidence Act where it is used that electronic record is also a document. So it is not something electronic evidence word is not used, electronic record is used, but it has given the effect of document. The way back in the year 1960, 62, 63, the Honorable Supreme Court has held whatever is recorded in those CDs, real in those days, was a document within the meaning of Section 3 of the Indian Evidence Act. So electronic. Today, in 2000, we have brought this law, the IT Act, whereby there have been amendments in several laws, IPC, CRPC, the Bankers Book Evidence Act, the Indian Evidence Act. They have been amended. But basically, our court tried their level best to interpret the definition of the document, and accordingly, as per those judgments and as per now the amendments, this electronic record is a document. So this document, if found false, bogus, which you have supplied to the police, you can be prosecuted. And therefore, this certificate assures the authenticity. Now, see, I always give this example in my lectures while discussing the topic of electronic record. If you go to the office of the deputy collector or subdivisional officer for obtaining caste certificate, even in the court, when the judge says you are acquitted to the accused, simply he says, and he gives judgment without sign. Without a judgment, without signature, will be admissible, will be authenticated. When you go to the office of sub-registrar, the subdivisional officer, for obtaining a caste certificate, and he gives you caste certificate mentioning you belong to a particular caste, there is no signature, there is no stamp, and you have shown it to the particular authority. Will those authority will act upon it, will accept it? No, because there is no signature, nor there is a stamp. So the documents which does not have either seal or sign, then there is every chances of manipulation, forgery, bogus, etc. It does not assure the authenticity. So the signature and the seal, not only physical signature, not only physical seal. Nowadays, there are other electronic means. The concept of electronic signature, e-signature, e-pass, those concepts have come in which we are living in. But every document is still signed. Even in this pandemic also, when somebody has to apply for a pass, e-pass, they get it through digital signature. But unless and until there is a digital signature, unless and until there is something to establish their official seal is used, it cannot be authenticated. So the certificate, as contemplated under Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act, assures as well as ensures the authenticity of the electronic record, which is sought to be proved in the court of law. That is why the certificate is required to prove electronic record if it is a copy. For original, no requirement. So how to prove the electronic record? As per the definition, see, I will not take you through the word by word definition. How to prove the electronic record? There are two manners. One is the placing original on record. Other one is the copy coupled with the certificate. What certificate? What is necessary? The certificate must be to the effect. See, there is no procedure. There is no provision. There is no particular pro forma of certificate as contemplated under Section 65B. But there are certain things, certain aspects to be covered up in the certificate. Namely, the person who gives the certificate must ensure that his computer was working properly and he is in lawful control of the computer, and his computer is operating regularly, functional. It is not, and even if it is not functional, but the at the time when the particular incident takes place, it was functional, it was operating properly. And even if it is not operating properly, but still this record, this evidence, this particular fact or particular incident has been recorded properly, and there is no manipulation. Because in this digitalization, digital era, there are several things possible. One can put your face on the body of other, morphing, which we call it. One can prepare bogus images, bogus videos, and therefore there has to be someone who assures authenticity of the document, means the information, and the authenticity of the system, the computer. Two authenticities are required to be supported by the person, assured by the person who gives it. One is the data, the information, that is the document, that is the CD, video, the text message, WhatsApp message, is the same, which is copied from my system, and my system also not manipulated, and there is no possibility of manipulation in my system. So authenticity of data and authenticity of the system, the computer, these very crucial things are to be mentioned in the certificate. And it is not necessary the person who gives the certificate must holds a degree of BTech, Bachelor of Engineering or Computer Science, etc. A person who operates the computer, which means that the person you operate your cell phone, you are the person, rightful person to issue the certificate as contemplated under section certificate as 65B of the Indian Evidence Act. So in short, this is the mechanism to prove the electronic record. If it is in the form of the CD, if it is form of the if it is in the form of video or a recorded version. But there are certain documents which are not either in the form of the CD or video in the pen drive, but they are printouts. Printouts are also their output, computer output, and the computer output are also to be proved in the manner provided under the Indian Evidence Act, because Act says so. As you know, in the year 2017, there was one discussion panel in which certain judicial officers were invited. I was part of that discussion conclave, and in which we had discussed this aspect, which I had shared with you, that how it is possible to issue certificate at every level, how the computer output, the printouts are also the required to be supported by the certificate, because judgments of the court are also, they are electronically generated, computer printout. But when there is a manual signature, there has to be dispensation of certificate as contemplated under section 65B, and therefore amendment is necessary to that effect. But that is not the matter of our discussion. What amendments are to be made, that is not area of our discussion, and also not the domain of us. Therefore, the printouts of Facebook, email, the WhatsApp messages, the text messages of a cell phone, the common thing, if a transaction on email is to be proved insofar as civil case is concerned, simply I have to prove that there was a transaction between me and the defendant, and I had given order of certain goods on mail, which defendant had accepted on by reply mail. He will mention that this is my domain name, this is my email ID, and I use it regularly, whereas defendant also use it regularly. And then all these things which I have discussed with you, that the computer output is correct one, it is taken from my computer, it is not manipulated, this and that, and his certificate to the best of his knowledge. So it shall be proved insofar as civil cases are concerned. But in the criminal law, proving mail is also a different task. We get it proved through a technical expert because they are seized by the person who seized it. And in order to prove a document, it is not always necessary that a person, only one person will be required to prove. There can be association of several persons to prove a particular document. A fraudulent documents may be proved not only by one witness, but by other witnesses, several witnesses, as I told you. That a sale deed can be proved by examining attesting witnesses, vendor or purchaser, who will come to the court and say, sir, it was executed in my office or in my presence. But in order to prove it that it is bogus one, fraudulent one, perhaps 2-3 persons may be required to be examined by the court. Only one witness may not be sufficient to conclude that this document is bogus. It will depend upon the facts and circumstances of the case. So electronic record is to be proved in the manner provided under section 65B. I was on the topic of the statements taken from the bank showing certain transactions. Then two questions comes in the mind, whether it should have a certificate under section 65B or should it have a certificate as contemplated under the Bankers Books Evidence Act. The Indian Evidence Act is a general law, whereas the Bankers Book Evidence Act is a special law. Everybody knows special law shall prevail. When a banking document is duly supported, is duly authenticated with a certificate as contemplated under the Bankers Book Evidence Act, then there is no necessity to have this certificate as contemplated under section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act, because special law shall prevail. Moreover, if you come across the wordings and the contents of the certificates, the requirements under the Indian Evidence Act, under the Bankers Book Evidence Act, we will see that the conditions are more stringent insofar as Bankers Books Act is concerned. Bankers Books Evidence Act, more safeguards are to be taken, and there is a mention that what kind of operating system, what kind of security measures have been taken by the bank, and the banker has to give those details in that certificate also. And therefore, once there is a certificate issued under the special law, one may not insist upon to have a certificate as contemplated, as provided under the Indian Evidence Act. And therefore, we should not feel that there is no certificate, then how to prove it? Once the certificate is there to show the banking transaction, then is it necessary to call the witness who had issued the certificate? It will depend upon the facts and circumstances of the case. If a banking document is supported with the certificate under the Bankers Book Evidence Act, then there is a provision that the judge can take it that this document is available in the bank and this is the copy of the document, extract of the document, as original cannot be brought to the court, and therefore court can consider it, can take it in evidence as an admissible piece of evidence, because there is a provision in the law also. And therefore judge will not insist that you bring original transactions, you bring original from the bank, you bring original register to the court. Not possible. It is not the intent of the legislative intent, because the special act has provided the extract shall be admissible in law, as it is also there in the Registration Act. There are provisions. If you bring index, there are index 1, index 2 kept in the office of sub-registrar. If those extracts are produced before the court, then there is a dispensation of original. Judge will not ask you to produce the original index which is to be kept there in the office of registrar itself. Why? Simple logic. If the original record of the registrar office is brought to the court, who will and what will be done in the office of sub-registrar? How long those transactions of registration can be kept withheld? And likewise, if the original document from the bank, original register from the bank is brought to the court, then what about the banking transaction? These are the busybodies. These are the very important institutions which cannot be withheld. Their work cannot be withheld, and therefore, logically, those provisions are there in the statute that provides dispensation of bringing originals in the court of law, and even certified copies can be admissible under law. So once there is a certified copy duly supported by the certificate, then it is admissible. Question is whether the person who issued the certificate will be necessary to be examined, will depend upon the facts. What is the defense of the other side will have to be seen. If his defense is that it is bogus certificate, it is fraudulent document, this is not issued by the bank, then perhaps may be necessary to examine the person who had issued the certificate. But it is not the defense of the accused that this is bogus document or fraudulent document. Perhaps it may not be necessary because it is admissible under law to be taken into consideration by the court. So what to be examined, who is to be examined, will depend upon facts and circumstances of each case. So don't bother to prove these documents. Now bogus documents, fraudulent sale deed is produced with the charge sheet. How to prove it? What is to be proved in the court? The transaction that it is fraudulent sale deed, and therefore it is seized. What is to be proved? Seizure Panchanama. As usual, we prove it by examining the witnesses, the investigation officer, and what factum will have to be proved? That the investigation officer has seized this document. Seizure. Once the seizure is proved, one fact of seizing the document is proved. What about the forgery? What about the nature of this document to be the bogus, forged? This can be proved by the person who will come to the court, who will say, sir, this I have not executed ever. I never had been to the office of sub-registrar. This is not the document which I signed. So those witnesses will come to the court, will say, sir, this is not the document which is signed by me. He will not say that this is bogus document. Not expected to extract it from his mouth, but ultimately result the necessary corollary will that it is a bogus document. Seizure Panchanama coupled with the proof of forgery, proof of the fact that this is not the original, this is not the authenticate document, that will be sufficient to prove that this person has created a bogus, manipulated document. Whether he has used this bogus sale deed or taking loan from the bank, cases are so that the person who not only created the document but also used as a genuine one for transaction with the bank. And therefore, again, in order to prove further chain, who will have to be examined? The banker. The banker who had accepted that sale deed. The authority or other his representative, the representative of the bank, who will say, sir, this person had been to our bank with this document claiming to be the owner of this property and sought loan advancement from the bank. See the chain of the incidents. One, now it is not only proved that this is bogus document, can be proved by the attesting witness, the purchaser, vendor. It is seized by, can be proved by the person who seized it, from in whose presence the in whose presence the document is seized, it can be proved. But
Open
it was used as a genuine, despite the fact that it is bogus document, can be proved by the person with whom such dealing was done of that this bogus document. So now see, just to prove it that this is bogus one and used it as a genuine one, witnesses are to be examined. So there can never be hard and fast rule that only this witness will prove it or that witness will prove it, but chain of witnesses will have to be examined, because there can never be restriction as to how many witnesses are to be proved, because every fact, every assertions which the prosecution has made as against the applicant, as against the accused, they are to be proved by examining the witnesses who are direct witnesses to the alleged transaction of fraud bogus. In this way, we will have to take the trial further that bogus document was created, it was used as a genuine one, though it is bogus one, and he obtained loan from the bank. So banker will tell to the court that this is an amount which was transferred from the bank in the account of the accused person. Now, accused had a bank account in his bank. This factum also will have to be proved by the banker that this person had opened a bank account which is maintained in our bank. So for which perhaps a manager may be necessary, may not be necessary, or some different person who had opened up the account or who maintains the account, who has a direct connection with the account, may be necessary. There can be several witnesses to prove such financial transactions, which can be number, which can be in several number. Then 712 extract. I had seen a question that a particular document is fraud. 712 extract. Commonly, it happens that a person prepares bogus 712 extract or property card and he uses it as a genuine for further transaction. Sale deed is genuinely executed. Sale deed is genuinely executed. A sells his property to B. In fact, C is the owner of the property. C is the owner of the property, but it is sold by A to B because A has prepared a bogus 712 extract or a property card. 712 extract, which is bogus and is used to execute a genuine sale deed. Now see, the sale deed is genuine, it is executed. All the witnesses will come to the court. They will inform to the court, will depose before the court that, sir, we had been to the office of sub-registrar, we have executed it. Purchaser also will say, sir, I have purchased it. Transaction is a genuine one. But what is the bogus? 712 extract. Who will depose? So even if you are examined all the witnesses, the witnesses to the document, seller, purchaser, will not be sufficient to prove that it is a bogus 712 extract. It is the talati or circle officer who will tell that no, there is no such record maintained in our office in revenue record as it shown in the present transaction. Therefore, according to me, that this is not the 712 extract issued by me or my office. His evidence will be sufficient to prove that the sale deed was executed on the basis of the bogus document, fabricated document. So this will be the way to prove the document. There can be some different ways, different aspects to prove the transactions. I was told to speak up to 6 o'clock, but as I told you in the very beginning, not possible to cover up the area of discussion which is given to me, and this online has certain constraints, and therefore I think we should stop here. We can continue our discussion right from this one in other lectures, next lecture. So I request the organizer to come in. Tingala sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. हा शिवाय
मोतीलाल.
खो खो खेळतोय आपण हं?
मोतीलाल ऑलरेडी दिलेला टास्क.
हो पण त्या दरम्यान तुम्ही काहीतरी बोला.
At the very outset, I must tell you that the lecture may not be as effective as it could be in physical lecture before you. So therefore, at the very beginning, I told you that the technology has certain constraint, but we have to habituate ourselves with this technology. Yes, you proceed.
Yes, today our guest lecturer, Sri Anil Dhavas sir, has given us very nice lecture on a documentary evidence. It also important to note in his lecture that he start from beginning, from the fact, then document various kind of documents, electronic record. It is definitely helpful to us, sir. And he also tried to give his experience, to share his experience with us. That's very good for us, and it will definitely help us in our practice as a public prosecutor. And it is our privilege that sir has given us such a his precious time for our organization. So I thankful to him from our organization, from our APP of the state of Maharashtra, for he has given us such a good time to us and share these thoughts with us. Thank you, sir.